The wedding was everything Zainab had ever dreamed of. From the moment the sun rose that morning, the entire compound buzzed with life. Women rushed about with trays of food. Musicians tuned their instruments. The scent of perfume and fresh flowers filled the air. Gold decorations shimmered under soft lights, making everything look like a scene from a fairy tale. Zainab sat quietly in her room before the ceremony, her hands trembling slightly as her friends adjusted her veil. "You look like a queen," one of them whispered. Zainab smiled, but her heart was beating fast, not from fear, but from hope. Today, she would start a new life, a better life, a life without struggle. When she finally stepped out, all eyes turned to her. She walked slowly, gracefully, her white dress flowing behind her like a dream. At the altar stood Toko, her husband. Tall, calm, handsome, perfect. At least, that was what everyone believed. When their eyes met, Zainab felt something shift inside her. He smiled at her, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It was polite, controlled, almost distant. Still, she ignored it. This was her wedding day. Nothing could go wrong. "I promise to love you forever," she whispered when it was time for their vows, her voice soft but steady. Toko nodded and repeated his vows just as smoothly. The crowd cheered. Music played. They were married. That night, everything changed. The mansion stood tall and silent under the moonlight. It was larger than anything Zainab had ever seen before. The gates opened slowly as their car drove in, and her breath caught in her throat. "This is our home?" she asked quietly. Toko glanced at her. "Yes," just one word. No warmth, no excitement. Zainab told herself he was just tired. Weddings could be exhausting. She didn't want to overthink it. As she stepped inside, her heels echoed softly against the marble floor. The house was beautiful, too beautiful, clean, perfect, almost untouched. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a place that was being watched. "Welcome home, my wife," Toko said behind her. Zainab turned to smile at him, but before she could speak, a voice cut through the silence. "I see he didn't tell you." Zainab froze. Slowly, very slowly, she turned toward the hallway. A woman stood there, elegant, calm, unbothered. She wore a silk robe, her hair neatly tied back. Her expression was not angry, not surprised, just knowing, as if she had been expecting this moment. Zainab's throat went dry. "Toko," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Who is she?" Silence filled the room like thick smoke. Toko didn't answer immediately. He simply stood there, his face unreadable. Then, finally, "She's my wife." The words hit Zainab like a slap. Her body swayed slightly, her mind struggling to catch up. "No," she said under her breath. "No, this is not real." The woman stepped forward, her footsteps soft but confident. "My name is Sedia," she said calmly. "I've been married to him for 6 years. 6 years. 6 years. Zainab turned to Toko, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You married me while you already had a wife?" Toko exhaled slowly, as if this situation was nothing more than an inconvenience. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" Zainab let out a broken laugh, tears already forming in her eyes. Complicated? She repeated. You call this complicated? Her chest tightened, her hands shook. Everything around her started to feel unreal. The walls, the lights, even the floor beneath her feet. She turned and ran toward the door. I'm leaving, she said. This is madness. I won't stay here. But when she reached the entrance, the doors didn't open. She pulled harder. Nothing. She rushed to the windows. Locked. All of them. Her breathing became uneven. No, 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 no. She searched her bag quickly, her fingers trembling as she grabbed her phone. Just then, it buzzed. A message. From her mother. Her heart dropped before she even opened it. This marriage saved us. Please endure. Zainab stared at the screen. Saved us? The words echoed in her mind, dragging her into memories she had tried so hard to forget. Flashback. The debt collectors, the shame, the whispers from neighbours, her father's illness, her mother's tears, and then Toko, calm, rich, powerful, offering help, offering marriage, a solution. At the time, it had felt like a miracle. Now, it felt like a trap. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Zainab's knees gave way, and she collapsed, her body shaking with silent sobs. Not just married, trapped. Time passed. Though she didn't know how long, the house remained quiet. Too quiet. Then, soft footsteps approached. Zainab didn't look up. She didn't want to see anyone, but the footsteps stopped beside her anyway. Sedia sat down next to her, not too close. Not too far, just enough to be heard. You're not the first, Sedia said quietly. Zainab slowly lifted her head, her eyes swollen with tears. What does that mean? She whispered. Sedia looked ahead, her expression distant. It means, she said, this house has seen many stories like yours. Zainab's heart sank deeper. Why are you still here? She asked weakly. Why didn't you leave? For the first time, something flickered in Sedia's eyes. Not anger, not sadness. Something heavier. Something darker. You'll understand soon, she replied. Zainab felt a chill run down her spine, because the way Sedia said it, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a promise. Far down the hallway, unseen by both women, a door creaked open slightly, and someone was watching. Days did not pass normally in the mansion. They dragged. Each morning felt heavy, like the air itself refused to move. The curtains were always perfectly arranged, the floors always spotless, the silence always too loud. Zainab moved through the house like a shadow. She woke up early, dressed quietly, and avoided eye contact with anyone, especially Toko. She ate little, spoke less. Sometimes she would stand by the window for long minutes, staring outside as if she could walk through the glass and disappear. But the gates remained locked, and so did her fate. And Toko, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened. He greeted her in the mornings. Good morning, Zainab. Calm. Normal. As if he hadn't shattered her world on the very night they got married. He sat at the dining table, read his messages, made calls, and occasionally asked her simple questions. Did you sleep well? Are you settling in? Zainab never knew how to respond, because every word from him felt fake. carefully planned, controlled, like everything else in that house. And then there was Sedia. Sedia remained the same, always calm, always composed. She moved through the house with quiet confidence, like someone who understood every corner of it and every secret hidden inside. Sometimes she spoke to Zainab, sometimes she didn't. But whenever their eyes met, there was something unspoken between them. Not friendship, not yet, but something close to understanding. And one afternoon, the silence finally broke. Zainab sat alone in one of the sitting rooms, her hands wrapped tightly around herself. The weight of everything, her marriage, her family, the lies pressed down on her chest until she could no longer hold it in. Tears slipped out, then more. Then she couldn't stop. She didn't even hear Sedia walk in. "Why are you crying?" Sedia asked softly. Zainab quickly wiped her face, turning away. "I'm fine. You're not," Sedia replied calmly. That simple honesty broke something inside Zainab. She looked up, her eyes filled with pain. "Why are you kind to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You should hate me." Sedia watched her for a moment. Then she sighed quietly and sat down. "I don't hate you," she said. "Why?" Sedia's gaze softened slightly. "Because I know exactly how this feels." The room went still. Zainab frowned. "What do you mean?" Sedia leaned back, her expression distant, as if she was looking into the past. "He didn't tell me either," she said slowly. "Not everything. Not the truth." Zainab's heart skipped. "What truth?" Sedia turned to her fully now, and for the first time, she began to reveal everything. "And Toko didn't marry me for love," Sedia said. "He married me for influence." Zainab listened, her breathing shallow. "My family had connections," Sedia continued. "Powerful ones. He needed access, so he married me." Zainab's chest tightened. "And after the wedding?" she asked quietly. Sedia let out a dry laugh. "After the wedding, the real man appeared." She counted on her fingers, her voice steady but cold. "He controlled my life. He decided where I went, who I spoke to, what I wore." Zainab's eyes widened. "He made everything look perfect on the outside," Sedia went on. "But inside this house, nothing was real." Zainab swallowed hard. "And the other women?" Sedia didn't hesitate. "He brought them in," she said, one after another. The words landed heavily. "Some stayed, some left, some," she paused slightly, "disappeared from this house quietly." A chill ran through Zainab's body. "What do you mean disappeared?" Sedia didn't answer directly. Instead, she leaned closer. "You need to understand something," she said. Zainab held her breath. "You were not his wife." Silence. "You're an asset." The word hit harder than anything else. Asset. Not a partner. Not a human being. Just something to be used. Zainab felt something rise inside her. Not fear this time, not sadness, anger, hot, sharp, alive. "I won't be disrespected like this," she said, her voice shaking but strong. Sedia watched her carefully. "You think I didn't say the same thing?" she asked quietly. Zainab froze, because suddenly reality crashed back in. Her family, the debt, her mother's message. This marriage saved us." Her anger slowed, then tangled with helplessness. "If I leave," Zainab whispered, "my family will suffer." Sedia nodded slowly. Yes, the truth was simple and cruel. Zainab looked down at her hands. For a moment, she felt small again, trapped again, but only for a moment, because something had already changed inside her. And that night, the house was quiet as always. But Zainab was no longer the same. She stood by the balcony, staring into the darkness outside. When Sedia stepped out to join her, Zainab didn't turn. "I'm not leaving," she said. Sedia raised an eyebrow slightly. "Of course you're not," she replied. "None of us leave easily." Zainab finally turned, her eyes steady now. "But I won't stay powerless." The words hung in the air, different, stronger. Sedia studied her face carefully. Then, slowly, she smiled. A real smile this time, not calm, not distant, but approving. "Then," Sedia said, "we're on the same side." Zainab felt something shift again. Not fear, not pain, something else. Control. For the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel alone. And later that night, inside a quiet sitting room, the two women sat across from each other, a small table between them, 2 glasses in their hands. No tension, no rivalry, just understanding. Zainab lifted her glass slightly. Sedia did the same. Their glasses touched softly, a quiet sound, but it meant everything. They were no longer strangers, forced into the same house. They were no longer rivals tied to the same man. They were something more dangerous. Partners. And somewhere in the mansion, behind another half-closed door, Toko stood in the shadows, watching, listening, and slowly smiling. The alliance between Zainab and Sedia changed everything. What had started as quiet conversations in hidden corners of the mansion soon became something much bigger. A mission. If Toko had spent years building his empire through lies, then they would tear it down with truth. And so, while the mansion slept each night, the two women worked quietly, carefully, patiently. They dug deep, deeper than either of them had expected, and what they found made even Sedia, who thought she knew her husband, go cold with shock. There were hidden bank accounts scattered across different countries, accounts holding millions. Money moved through fake companies and false names. Then came the documents about his secret children, 3 of them with 2 different women. Children he had hidden completely, sending money through middlemen to keep their existence buried. Zainab stared at the files in disbelief. "How many lives has he destroyed?" she whispered. Sedia's face darkened. "Too many." But it got worse. There were messages with multiple women, affairs stretching back years, promises, manipulation, lies copied and pasted from one woman to another. And then the illegal deals, bribery, fraud, land theft, signed agreements with powerful men who helped cover his crimes. By the time dawn approached, both women sat in stunned silence. Toko was worse than they had imagined. He wasn't just cruel, he was dangerous. The tension inside the mansion grew heavier. Toko had begun to notice the change. Zainab no longer looked afraid. Sedia no longer avoided him. And that unsettled him. One evening, he confronted Zainab in the dining room. "You've been distant," he said coldly. Zainab kept her voice calm. I'm simply adjusting. Toko stepped closer. Don't test me. She met his stare. For the first time, she didn't look away. That single act of defiance ignited something ugly in him. Before she could react, his hand struck her face. The sound cracked through the room. Silence followed. Zainab staggered back, one hand flying to her cheek. Her skin burned. Her ears rang. And then, footsteps, fast. Sedia appeared, her eyes locked onto Zainab's reddened face. Then slowly shifted to Toko. The calm woman who had spent years enduring him was gone. In her place stood something far more dangerous. Touch her again, she said, her voice low and sharp, and you'll regret it. Toko laughed, a short, mocking sound. You think you can stop me? Sedia stepped forward. No, she said. I know I can. Something in her tone made even him pause. For the first time, Toko looked uncertain, just for a second. But it was enough, because the women knew then. He could be shaken, and if he could be shaken, he could be broken. That night, they made their decision. They would not run. They would not disappear quietly like the others. No. Toko would face the truth in front of everyone who worshipped him. They chose exposure, not escape, and so the planning began. They gathered everything, videos secretly copied from his private office, voice recordings of his deals, financial records proving fraud, messages linking him to his affairs. Every piece of evidence was carefully organized, every move calculated. Zainab even forced herself to get close to Toko's business associates. She smiled when she wanted to scream. She listened when she wanted to walk away. She asked careful questions, collecting details without raising suspicion. Each conversation was a step toward his downfall. But as the final day approached, doubt crept in. Late one night, Zainab stood by the balcony, clutching the flash drive that held everything. Her hands trembled. What if this ruins everything? She whispered. Sedia joined her. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Sedia placed a hand on her shoulder. We're already ruined, she said softly. This is how we rebuild. The words settled into Zainab's heart. And for the first time, she truly believed them. Using the perfect opportunity came with Toko's birthday, his biggest celebration of the year, a grand event held at the mansion. Elite guests, business partners, politicians, media personalities, everyone who mattered would be there. The perfect stage. The night before, Zainab sat in her room, holding the evidence. Her heart pounded. This ends tomorrow, she whispered. And the party sparkled with wealth and glamour. Crystal chandeliers lit the ballroom. Music floated through the air. Guests laughed and toasted to Toko. He stood proudly at the center of it all, dressed in an expensive black suit, smiling like a king on his throne. He had no idea. Then the grand staircase doors opened, and all conversation stopped. Zainab and Sedia descended together, strong, elegant, united. Zainab wore silver. Sedia wore deep blue. Side by side, they looked less like victims and more like justice itself. Toko frowned. Something was wrong. He could feel it. And when it was time for his speech, he stepped onto the stage with practiced confidence. Tonight, he began, raising his glass, we celebrate success. The screen behind him suddenly lit up. His smile vanished. The first video played, then another, then another. Private recordings, financial evidence, messages, confessions, transaction histories, every lie, every betrayal, every crime displayed for all to see. Gasps filled the ballroom. Whispers erupted. Phones were raised. Cameras flashed. Shock turned into chaos. "No!" Toko shouted, spinning toward the screen. "These are lies." But his voice was drowned by the evidence. His associates backed away. Guests stared in disgust. Reporters rushed forward. The empire he had spent years building collapsed in minutes. And then Toko broke, his face twisted in panic and shame. Without another word, he turned and ran from the ballroom, straight into one of the private rooms upstairs. The mighty Toko, once feared, admired, untouchable, locked himself inside, sobbing. The only person left with him was his PR manager, frantically trying to calm him down. But no amount of damage control could save him now. It was over. Everything had ended. And outside, beneath the quiet night sky, Zainab stood on the mansion steps. Tears streamed down her face. But these tears were different. Not pain, not helplessness. Freedom. "I thought I lost everything," she whispered. Sedia stepped beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "No," she said gently. "You found yourself." Zainab closed her eyes. And for the first time since her wedding day, she felt peace. And months later, the mansion was gone from their lives. Toko faced public disgrace, legal investigations, and the collapse of his business empire. His name became a warning, not a legacy. And the women he once tried to control, they rose. Zainab founded an organization that helped women trapped in abusive and manipulative marriages. She traveled, spoke publicly, and became a voice of courage. Every time she told her story, another woman found strength in her own. Sedia built a new life entirely. She launched her own company, independent and thriving. For the first time in years, she smiled without pretending, and though their paths became different, their bond remained, not as victims of the same man, but as survivors who had rebuilt themselves from ashes. End quote. One bright afternoon, they sat together at a quiet cafe, watching the city move around them. Zainab smiled. "Do you ever regret staying long enough to fight?" Sedia looked at her and shook her head. "No." "Why?" Sedia smiled softly. "Because if we had left too soon, we would never have discovered how strong we really were." Zainab looked out at the sunlight and smiled too. She finally understood. Sometimes love is not about staying. Sometimes love is choosing yourself, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And sometimes the happiest endings begin the moment you walk away from what was never meant for you. Thanks for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. Like and share so more people can enjoy this story with you. Bye for now.